Well, hello again. I had a pretty rough weekend this weekend. Busy, busy, busy. I didn't get a chance to do any filming at all. So I know it's been a few days between videos, but that's why. Spring is in the air, and I'm just motivated to get other things done. Wifey had me busy doing some things. Anyway, we're finally back at it, at least for a few minutes. What we have here right now is a whole bunch of disconnected wires. They're just dangling everywhere, okay, where they were cut loose from primarily the can dome resistor. And some wires that were run from point A to point B by a previous owner. And sometimes they were good, sometimes not. He just used whatever he could find as a junction point in some cases. So we need to kind of maybe tie up all these loose ends and get them connected together. So, we have our wire that runs from pin 4 here all the way across to pin 3 on the RF tube over here. Okay, we got to start we can make a little organization down in here. And this is what I'm talking about. All this crap up in here, all this dangly thing. Now I've got the chassis upside down from where you normally see it, because I want to find out which of these wires is, separate the wires that are actually going into this box. Because our next step is to remove it. So here's all our dangling wires. You can see them, they're like everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Some of them I won't care about because they go into the box. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do is just cut those wires right up next to the box. Just cut them off so I can get rid of most of the stuff we don't need. And when we lay new capacitors in here, we'll just run new wires. But we have a bunch of them over here. We got to do something with all this stuff. So what we're going to do today is install at least one terminal strip. I'm going to handle this loose wire business with terminal strips. I want to put one right here, and that will be this one right here. We're going to go ahead and fasten it onto there like that, kind of at an angle where it's away from everything. And I may wind up putting another one over here somewhere. I don't know. I may just stick it down here someplace. I don't know. That's the second one. The idea is to connect most of these loose dangly wires to the terminals on the strip, and then just run maybe 1 or 2 wires from that terminal strip to where they need to go. I'll be putting probably some jumpers. You can hook wires. Let's say you had wires that needed to be hooked together, but you didn't have enough room in one terminal to put them in, and maybe 2 or 3 wires here, a couple of wires here, they all needed to be connected together. You can run a jumper between them using these holes down here. Or you can run a couple of wires through the bottom holes, a couple through the top, and then put a jumper in. You can do a lot of things here, but you got to be careful now. That center one is ground, okay? It's grounded. Many times I cut that ground off. Just take a pair of cutters and cut that off so I can't solder anything to it by mistake. You can also just bend it down all the way around to the rear. Just bend it right on around, okay? That way you don't mistakenly solder wire to ground. Then when you turn your radio on, all of a sudden you start seeing smoke on a certain portion of the radio because everything's going to ground through those wires. You don't want that. So let me go ahead and get this first terminal strip in, and if I have any energy left, we'll do a little more. If not, we'll pick it up again tomorrow. Our terminal strip is in. I may wind up bending that thing a little bit more at an angle this way, and maybe you can bend them just a little bit after you get them in to kind of make them clear certain places, give yourself plenty of room. Okay? Well, let me see. I think I just about got that right. I don't think I've got anything pushing against it or it pushing against. Now, I could not put that terminal strip over here. The reason being is if you look, it would block those 2 holes right there, and if you look inside those holes, you see our tweaking screws. I don't want to block that. Over here, there are none. They just go up into a couple of rivets in there, so that thing will not affect that transformer at all. This is the capacitor trimmer for one side of the cap. One side of the transformer rather, and this is the trimmer cap for the other side, the primary and secondary. I'm not sure which is which, but we'll figure that out later. Anyway, while I was putting in the terminal strip, I decided, I made a command decision. Are you ready for my command decision? I'm in command of this thing. We're going to cut all the wires and take out this box. Yes, we are. I love to cut wires. Let me start with number 1 here. It's just trying to get down in there, my cutters. I love to cut wire. God, chop, chop. Here we go. The first one's cut. There it is. Yes, it is. Now we're going to do the rest and get that whole thing out of there. It's held in by a screw right here. And it's held in by a screw, a nut, and rather in a washer right here. Oh, here we go. Chop, chop, chop. Well, I got the nuts off. And there it is. It is out. Check that blobby mess, huh? Oh, I don't even need this thing. I'm more interested in what the chassis looks like. Oh, we got a lot of stuff on that chassis that needs to come off. I'll have to get out my little scraper tomorrow and get that baby clean. But I think what we'll do is go ahead and heat this thing up anyway, you know, later. Get this tape off there. We don't need that on anymore. And we'll go ahead and empty that baby out and let you take a look at it. What I'd like to do is take another terminal strip and put it right here on where that screw came through to hold the lid on, and put another terminal strip over here. So I can have 1, 2, 3 terminal strips. That'd be a whole lot easier. That would enable me to get down in here, reach down to this farther and better. And it may only take one. I don't know. We're going to have to play the game as we see it. Anyway, that's where we're at so far. Hopefully the next time you see this, well, I'll tell you what, it's late at night. What I might do tomorrow is put the old heat gun to it. And then go ahead and clean this up a little bit. And the next time you see this thing, I should have at least one more terminal strip in. But tomorrow, I'm not going to end this video until I've given you a chance to, you know, to see what's in there. You know what I'm looking forward to seeing? I'm looking forward to seeing that coil. I don't know if you remember the coil. Remember the coil right here, the 100 microfarad coil in series with this capacitor coming off the plate of the 24 tube? It's going to be fun. I want to see what that looks like. I may have to wind up ordering one off of eBay. I know it. They sell them. They look like tiny little capacitors is what they look like. And they have 2 leads coming out of one end, just like a little radial E-cap, you know. And they're black like an E-cap too, except I don't think they have any stripes or anything on them. They just have a value. But we can pick them up pretty cheap. So let me go ahead and mess around with this a little bit more. And the next time you see me, I'll be putting the heat to this baby. It is the next morning, and we are going to hit this baby with some heat. See if we can't get that thing soft enough. I could use my Bernzomatic torch, you know, just kind of wave it around. But I decided against that. I'm just going to go ahead and use the heat gun instead. Well, she's starting to soften up, and the stuff is running out of the bottom. What I'm going to do when I get it nice and hot, just a little bit more, then I'll go ahead and raise it up and take this long, thin screwdriver blade I got here and kind of ease it up on one side and see if I can't pop the entire thing out. Well, there it is. Boy, talk about a gooey mess, huh? Look at that. It's all encased in a cardboard. And it's just one big old block of blob of, I don't know what they use for potting compounds, some kind of crap. Anyway, the stuff inside is a whole lot different from the stuff on the end. I don't even know if I'll be able to get this thing apart. I'm pretty much sure I'm not going to be able to use that coil now, but we'll see. I don't know. I'll just let it cool down and see if I can't bust it apart. Well, there's the way they put them in there. They just stack them up, just like little bullets with insulators in between them. Just regular standard old-fashioned style capacitor is all it is. And then, like I said, they put the cardboard insulator between each layer to insulate them from one another. Anyway, the capacitors are definitely no good, so all of this will be going. However, here I labeled the coil, fortunately, before I tore it all apart, and this is our coil. I'm looking forward to, like I said, it was just a little round thing. If I were to replace it, I don't know what the old one looks like. We'll go ahead and tear this junk off the outside and take a look at it. It's probably no good, but all I have to do is ohm through those 2 wires and see what happens. I think I've determined that this stuff, this brown stuff, is beeswax. They just filled it up with beeswax and then put tar coating on the end, which sealed it into the can. One last thing, I tore them all apart, and there are 9 capacitors in there. 9 of those old suckers, and one of them, of course, I labeled as C4 right there. Let's see which one that was. Well, it's not even connected. And I said we had 9 capacitors in that can, so let's count and see how many we have. I highlighted them previously in green. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that's it. This is the choke. That's not in there. Anyway, 9 plus the coil. Okay? And it was right on. 9 caps plus the coil. All right, we'll go ahead and start replacing those. I think after I get the old terminal strips set up again. And right now, what I want to try to do is take this old putty knife and just gently. Let me get this over here where we have a little support. I think I can take this little old putty knife and get 99% of this stuff off, and then take a cloth with some WD-40 and wet down the cloth, and I think the rest of it should come off. If this is the same kind of stuff, the same kind of compound they used later in the Philco Bakelite blocks, if you'll remember that black stuff that held the capacitors in. So let's see what will happen here. I'm going to kind of give it a little gently. I'm kind of hoping it'll come off. I may have to wind up heating it. Yeah, she's starting to come off pretty easy. There we go. It's just a wax-like subject more than a substance, more than a tar. Let me go ahead and take, it'll take 2 hands to kind of hold this chassis still while I do that. Nice, gentle, easy movement. Should get it right off. See, she's coming right off. Well, let me see what I can do with 2 hands, and then I'll come back. There we go. Barely a mark on it. What I'm going to do now is take the old WD-40, and I'm going to spray it on here. Give me a nice little blob of it. And let it soak in a little bit. And then we'll see if that stuff won't wipe off with the WD-40. I showed this once before in another video I had a while back, where if you take a Q-tip and WD-40 on those Bakelite blocks, look at that, just comes right off, just as slick as a whistle. Take WD-40 and Q-tips on those Bakelite blocks after you empty them out, as most of the debris, and you take that old WD-40 and that Q-tip, it'll just clean it right up, just as slick as a whistle. Look at that, no effort at all, and you don't have to worry about a lot of fumes, with like the lacquer thinner. And alcohol won't do it, but that WD-40, man, it does a great job, okay? Really good stuff. Well, there we go. All right, next time I hope to have it figured out how I plan to do the terminal strip business. I don't know if I'm pretty sure I'm going to put one right here, okay? I might even put one over here in the other hole, which is right there. Okay, or I may put one here and not put one there. It all depends. I'm going to kind of figure out how I want to run things. This is the kind of thing that, running wires through a chassis and all, the only thing I can really tell you, or anyone else can tell you, is to keep the wires close to the chassis, prevents hum. As far as how you plan to, a terminal strip here and a terminal strip there, that's primarily up to you. You're going to have to figure that out. You're all big boys and big girls. Sometimes you just got to be on your own, and if it doesn't work when you get it all hooked up, tear it out and redo it. Don't worry about it, okay? Don't. Oh, am I doing this right? There is no right way, except to make sure you get it as close to the chassis as you can. And you don't want wires that overlap sharp edges on, like tube sockets. You don't want to wire real close to it. I'll give you an example before we shut down here today. This, where is it at now? I think it was on the other side. Yeah, this. Let me flip this over. This wire right here. See, let me zoom in. See that black wire right there? It was laying against that terminal. And now I pulled it apart to separate it from the terminal, or the socket pin. And when I did, the insulation came right apart. So I now have continuity. I touched it with my multimeter probe there, and I touched it up here, and I got continuity. That's where it connects, okay? So that wire there is going to have to be replaced. As a matter of fact, I'll probably wind up replacing maybe the second one here right there too. I don't know. This one here might have to be replaced. These wires are getting kind of frayed, but you know, that's the thing we'll do at the end. After we get everything wired up the way it's supposed to be, then we'll go ahead and start replacing those funky looking wires. Anyway, I appreciate once more everybody being here. And a lot of good comments are coming out of these things. I'm glad to hear some folks are feeling a lot more comfortable. The thing about all this is don't get excited. Don't get shook up. You know, if you can't figure it out the first time, you'll figure it out the second time. Or maybe the third or the fifth or the 10th or the 20th. It does not matter, okay? Don't think there's whiz kids out there that can do this stuff blindfolded. Believe me, there is not. They have to sit down and do the same thing you will be doing, figuring it out wire by wire, just the way I've been showing you. Nothing to it. Piece of cake. Until next time, this is John. A little update on the old FM transmitter. The old FM transmitter is working. It's working fine now. The problem is I don't have any transmitting distance. I wound up changing the coil in it, putting a brand new coil, doing a better job on it this time. And the transmitting distance is just horrible. I probably get about maybe 4 or 5 feet maximum. And that's it. You know, the fidelity's pretty good. But I'll tell you what, the slightest movement this way or that way, and you lose the signal. I'm not happy about this thing at all. I think the whole design sucks. What I might do is try to come up with one that has more than one transistor in it. I still have a couple of transistors left, or maybe I can even modify this one. I don't know. But at least it's a success. You know, it does work. It just doesn't transmit very far. That's all. So we'll get to that in the near future. And meanwhile, we have another project I'm going to be working on. All of these parts came out of my bench. Every single one of them. I got transistors. Now these little 100 picofarad capacitors here are rated at 1,000 volts. Now that's what I call a little bit overkill, but I was able to pick up a ton of those babies on eBay one day, and I went ahead and gave Brendan, we split them. I gave him half of them. He said he appreciated that. That was before I no longer heard from him, before he got ill. And this is all there is to the whole project. Kind of interesting. And that perf board, okay, of course, is what I'm going to mount it on. There'll be a wire that runs all the way around the board, and these wires here, of course, will come off of one end and one will come off the other. It's kind of an interesting little thing. You'll enjoy seeing that and what we do with it.